Hello, pro wrestling fans. This is the Pro Wrestling Wizard, just Doug, and this video is going to be a little bit different. Now, generally, I talk about all things that is current in pro wrestling, and I sometimes go back and I do a little history, but I want to do something that I really haven't seen a whole lot on YouTube. So today, we're going to talk about the history of the women's pro wrestling. Now, this goes way, way, way back to mid 20th century. So I'm going to stop babbling. Let's get into it. Sit the title card and let's talk about it. So today's topic, we are going to talk about the very first known women's wrestler in the scene. Her name was Mildred Burke. She was a legendary figure in the history of pro wrestling and the women's whole history of women's wrestling. She played a significant role in legitimizing the popularizing women's wrestling in the United States in the early mid 20th century. So, whew, that was a tongue twister, guys. But let's get into it. The early life and entry into Miss Mildred Burke. Mildred Bliss, later on as Mildred Burke, was born on August 5th in Coffeyville, Kansas. She grew up during the time when women's opportunities in sports were severely limited, but her strong-willed nature and determination set her on a path that few women dared to tread. Her entry into wrestling was unconventional. As a young woman, Mildred was drawn to professional wrestling after attending a show with her first husband. Despite the sport being dominated by men and considered inappropriate for women, she was captivated by the athleticism and the challenge. She approached Billy Wolf, a wrestling promoter, a trainer, asking to train her as a wrestler. Initially, Wolf dismissed her, but she managed to pin one of his male wrestlers in a demonstration. Wolf agreed to train her, and this moment marked the beginning of the groundbreaking career that she has made in pro wrestling. In the early 1930s, women's wrestling was more of a novelty act in carnivals, sideshows than a respected sport. Women were often featured in matches that emphasized the spectacle over skill, but Mildred Burke was determined to change that. Under Wolf's management, Burke began wrestling professionally in 1935, quickly gaining a reputation for her impressive strength and technical prowess. She often was pitted against men in intergender matches, which was a rarity at the time, but more than not, she emerged victorious. Mildred Burke's career took a significant turn in 1937 when she won the World's Women's Championship by defeating Clara Mortensen. The victory was a watershed moment in women's wrestling as it marked the beginning of the Burke's nearly 2-decade-long reign as the undisputed champion. But during this time, Burke traveled extensively, defending her title across the United States and around the world. She was known for her intense training regimen, which included weightlifting, sparring with men, making her one of the strongest and most technically gifted, skilled wrestler of her era. Burke's matches were highly competitive and often lasting well over an hour, and she was known for her ability to outlast and maneuver her opponents. Her success in the ring helped her elevate the status of women's pro wrestling and gradually earned it more respect and recognition as a legitimate sport. Now, Mildred Burke's professional life was deeply intertwined with her personal life, particularly through her relationship with Billy Wolf, who was not only her manager and promoter, but at the same time was her husband. Wolf controlled much of women's wrestling in the United States during the 1940s, managing a stable of female wrestlers and booking their matches. But, however, the relationship was tumultuous, marred by infidelity and domestic strife. Tisk, tisk, tisk. In the early 1950s, after years of professional and personal conflict, Burke and Wolf separated, leading to a bitter feud that had significant repercussions for women's wrestling. Wolf attempted to blackball Burke from the industry, using his influence preventing her from booking matches. Despite these challenges, Burke refused to be sidelined. She established her very own promotion titled World Women's Wrestling Association, or the WWA, and continued to promote women's wrestling independently. Burke's struggle for independence was a landmark moment in the history of women's wrestling, as it marked the first time a female wrestler had successfully challenged the male-dominated power structure of the sport, and was successful. Her legacy and impact is immense within women's wrestling. Her contributions to professional wrestling extended far beyond her in-ring accomplishments. She is widely credited for legitimizing women's wrestling and transforming it from a sideshow attraction to a respected sport. Burke's influence can be seen in the way that she trained and mentored her other female wrestlers, competitors, her comrades, many of whom went on to have very successful careers themselves because she took the time and she trained them. Her promotions in the WWA helped maintain the growth and visibility of women's wrestling during a time where it was struggling to gain mainstream acceptance. Burke's work laid the groundwork for future generations of women's wrestlers who continue to benefit from the trail she blazed. Although her career was often overlooked by mainstream wrestling establishments during her lifetime, Mildred Burke has been since recognized as one of the greatest female wrestlers of her time. Of all time, if even. In 2016, she was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame Legacy Wing, an honor that solidified her status as a pioneer and trailblazer to the sport. In addition to her being inducted into the Hall of Fame, she has been honored by numerous other wrestling organizations in the Hall of Fame, further cementing her legacy as a foundational figure in the history of pro wrestling. Retiring from wrestling in the 1950s, Mildred Burke continued to be involved in the sport through training, promoting young wrestlers. She remained a passionate advocate for women's wrestling until her death on February 18, 1989. Burke's life and career are a testament to a power of determination and the impact one person can have on the entire industry. Her legacy continues to inspire wrestlers and fans alike, and she's not only just remembered as a champion, but as a revolutionary figure who will forever change the game of women's wrestling. I am Pro Wrestling Wizard Just Doug. Thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of the history of women's pro wrestling. I hope to see you guys again. Hopefully I can speak better English, but make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And if there's anything else you guys want me to touch up on regarding women's wrestling, leave them in the comments and I'll touch them up as best as possible. But till next time.